What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you another one of my 2014 WCQ hat format deck profiles. The deck I wanted to show off today is Fire Fist Artifact Traptrix, also known as F.A.T. There's a couple different versions of this deck. For example, there's the Fire Fist Artifact Hand Traptrix deck or the Fire Fist Hand Traptrix deck, and in general, they all kind of have that same F.A.T acronym. It's just based on how you spell it. For the sake of this deck, this is the purest form acronym-wise because it's the F, A, and the T. And this deck is really cool because it combines all three aspects similar to how H.A.T does. And it's basically meant to kind of go 1-for-1 in card advantage or go +1 with most of its cards. So it's a really grindy, cool deck, very consistent, and one thing I can say though is this deck is known to go over 40 cards. A lot of people will play 45, sometimes even more. I tried to make this deck 40 or 41, I forget what I'm playing, I believe it's 40 for this one. And with that, I did have to cut down on a couple cards, which I'll explain as we move forward. But really cool deck, and like I said, if you're interested in some of those other builds of the deck, definitely let me know in the comment section, and I can try to make a deck profile on those as well. But without further ado, let's actually get into this deck. So starting off with the monsters, I play 2 copies of Fire Fist Bear. Basically, when it inflicts damage, you can set a Fire Formation spell from your deck, and then you can get rid of a face-up Fire Formation spell or trap to pop a monster your opponent controls. Most builds do play 2 of this. There are some that play 3, but for the most part, 2 is very standard. Then what's kind of not standard is I play 1 Gorilla. Basically, it's the same thing as Bear, except it gets to set a Fire Formation spell when it destroys a monster by battle. And then you can get rid of a Fire Formation spell or trap when you, and if you do, you pop a back row. The reason I chose to play this is I kind of didn't want to play 3 Bear, but I wanted to keep all 3 engines at the same number for the monsters. It'll make a little more sense when we get into the Artifact and the Traptrix engine. But that's the reason I'm playing that, as well as just having the option to search back row removal is really nice. And then the honorary Fire Fist is 1 copy of Wolfbark. Being able to bring back your Fire Fist monsters and make Xyz is really strong, and it's searchable, so why not? Moving on to the artifact side of the deck, we play 3 copies of Artifact Madolche and 1 Beagletech. So again, similar to how I said that I wanted to keep the engines the same, the Fire Fist side of the deck is 4 monsters, so I wanted to play 4 artifacts as well. And kind of the reason is because also, I don't think 1 engine in this deck is better than the rest. So that's why I wanted to keep it even. In terms of this deck though, I think the artifacts feel slightly out of place in a sense, and so that's why sometimes I prefer the other versions of this deck, though the artifacts are really strong. And the reason I say that is because I kind of want to play only 3 Madolche in this deck and not play Beagletech, because Beagletech doesn't really have a good place in the deck. Like, you don't gain any extra advantage from popping your back row unless, you drew some of the artifacts already. So, like, that is kind of a thing, but at the same time, I would almost want to play a Scythe in this deck. But if I did that, I would want to play a Beagletech as well, just because at that rate, I'm playing 5 artifacts or 4 artifacts, and so there's a higher likelihood of drawing them. But I think very standard is the 3 and 1, so that's why I'm playing those. Obviously, being able to set these as back row, and then if they're destroyed on your opponent's turn, you can special summon them, and when they're special summoned, Madolche will pop a face-up card, and Beagletech will pop up to 2 of your back row. So really good, and especially good for making rank 5s, which is why I think it is worth playing these cards in general. Moving on to the Traptrix lineup, we play 3 copies of Mermail and 1 copy of Dionea. So usually Traptrix decks, or decks that play a Traptrix engine, will play 2 Dionea. I think it's a little less needed in this deck, simply for the sake of you're playing other engines, and also you're trying to just gain as much advantage as possible. And so this card usually is only good later game. So that's why I chose the 3-in-1. Obviously, Mermail being able to search your trap hole normal cards, normal traps, and Dionea being able to summon back one of your Traptrix in grave, and then on special summon for Dionea, you can reset one of your trap hole normal traps in grave, and Mermail on special summon is able to pop a back row, which is very good. So that's why I think you should definitely at least play one Dionea if you're going to play this engine. And again, it's 4 similar to the Artifact and Fire Fist engine. And then lastly for monsters, similar, I'm still playing 4 hand traps, and that's 2 Max C and 2 DD Crow. If you've seen any other videos on my channel, you know I really do like this ratio. Especially in a deck like this that has so much versatility, and it kind of in some ways can confuse your opponent on what you're playing. The draw power for Max C is nice, but also DD Crow hits a lot of matchups, so it's just really good to play a combination of those along with everything else. But that is it for the monsters. For the spells, we play 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki, being able to search your Fire Fist and Beast Warrior type monsters like Wolfbark, like I mentioned. 3 copies of Pot of Duality, just because some turns you don't really make the biggest push. For example, summoning a Mermail and setting some back row. So Duality is very good. For the back row, this is where it gets a little interesting in my opinion. I'm playing 2 copies of MST, 1 copy of Ignition, and 1 copy of Double Cyclone. So, generically, a lot of decks will play just 3 MST, some builds will play 3 Ignition, some will play like 2 Double Cyclone. I've seen some builds go 2, 2, and 2. There's just no set standard for what type of back row lineup you should have. I think MST generically, since you're playing all the other engines, is very strong, but Ignition is also just a really good card so that your opponent is a little more weary on popping your back row, as well as being able to take some of those artifacts out of deck. For example, if you open a Beagle Tech or open a Madolche, it is good to be able to go and pop it and get another card out of deck. And then Double Cyclone is really good because if you open artifacts, as well as being able to get rid of things like Tenkis and other things, it just feels good. So I've really been liking this ratio. I've seen a couple other topping decks play sort of similar. Like I said, there's a different combination, like some will play 3, some will play 3, some will play 2, some will play 2, 2, 2. Just different things, but this has been working really, really well for me, so I enjoy that a lot. For more spells, almost done with them, 2 copies of Soul Charge and 1 copy of Dark Hole. Very, very good. Obviously, this conflicts with Duality like any other deck, but there's not always the time where you need to be making those crazy pushes. So on your turns where you do need to make them, Soul Charge just gives you all the advantage in one go that you need. And then obviously Dark Hole clears boards. For the trap cards, 3 copies of Artifact Sanctum. Being able to summon your artifacts from deck is just really good, and, summon a Madolche, pop a card. So it's really, really good. And that's the other thing with Ignition, I guess. Why I only choose to play 1 is because I'm only playing 4 artifacts. If I see Sanctum and an Ignition, most of the time, I'd rather be able to have the option to summon a artifact off of Sanctum if I don't have enough artifacts. So, setting 1 doesn't do as much as just being able to summon it for free. 2 copies of Breakthrough Skill, 1 Traptrix Trapple Nightmare, 1 copy of Bottomless, 1 copy of Torrential, 1 Compulse, 1 Warning, and 1 Blackhorn. Some builds will play things like Wiretap, or Call the Haunted is another good option, but like I said, I wanted to keep this deck as low count as possible, which is why I chose not to play those, but moving forward, I might switch it up and try to play at least 1 copy of both of those, just because they're really good, and it kind of feels weird playing an artifact deck without the Call the Haunteds, though not every deck is doing that. It's just my personal playstyle. I prefer it. lastly, for the extra deck, 1 copy of Gaia Dragon to stack on top of the rank 5s, 1 Tiras, only 1 Pleiades. Obviously, I'm not playing Call the Haunted like I said, and I'm trying to put a little less focus on specifically needing the artifacts. So 1 Pleiades usually gets the job done. 1 Volcasaurus to burn for game and then be able to stack the Gaia Charger on top of. I'm testing 1 Marrowgeist. This card's actually really cool. What it does is after damage calculation, if it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can detach an Xyz material from this card and shuffle the destroyed monster into the deck instead of sending it to the graveyard. So this is a way to deal with hands, as well as shuffle like opponents' Traptrix into the deck so then they can't Dianea them back. It deals with a lot of other cool cards, so like I was searching for videos on this deck, like when I was building it originally, and some of the older lists were playing this, and I think it's just such a cool card, and I've been enjoying it. I think it's really strong and a little bit underrated, so for now I am playing that. 1 Black Ship of Corn, 1 101, 1 Giant Hand, 1 Heartland Draco, which it can get the other part of the effect because of your Tenkies, 1 Diamond Direwolf for back row and just pesky cards, 1 Exciton, 1 Emerald, being able to gain small bits of advantage as well as putting back cards, which is really important. For example, that 1 Pleiades, you can reshuffle it, or putting back some of your artifacts so that your Ignitions or Sanctums aren't always dead if you see too many too early on. 1 Dweller, 1 Cowboy, and 1 Rhapsody in Berserk to round out the extra deck. But that is it for this deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, get notified anytime I put a new video out. Share this video with your friends. Comment any types of videos you want to see in the comment section. I always try to respond to those comments as well as try to put out the videos you guys want to see. So definitely let me know. And anyways, guys, I will see you in the next video.